Welcome to the Choose FI Radio Podcast, Episode 10. Skinny Waist, Fat Wallet.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, so Brad and I are back in the studio today. Thanks for joining me, Brad.
Yeah, you bet, Jonathan. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we are now rounding into our third month of recording. We've got, more than 10 podcasts under our belt at this point. I find that incredible.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, man. This is so much fun. I mean, we sit here and just record, 3, 4, 5 episodes at a clip. We just, we're sitting here 2 feet apart from each other and just having fun, talking.
Lots of fun. And you know what? I really appreciate the audience members, those of you that have reached out to us and sent us a message or commented on our post. That's really cool. We love the interaction and we've learned a lot from you already. We hope you're getting a lot out of this. So if you have already left us a review on iTunes, we appreciate it. If you have not, but you want to, that would be fantastic. Just go into iTunes, go search for Choose FI, go to ratings and reviews and, leave us an honest review, hopefully a 5 stars. Also, for those of you that listen to us on iTunes, but were not aware that we had a companion website, we're super excited about the website, choosefi.com. We built it as a framework to really organize these ideas for you. So if you're interested in a particular topic and you want to get more information relating to that topic, go to our website, choosefi.com. Go to our Get Started page first to kind of find out how you can get integrated into our community. And then from there, I would recommend you go to our Experiments page where we've actually built out some of the concepts and theories that we discuss on the show. So today, as you may have heard from the title, we're going to be discussing really fitness and how to look at that from a personal finance perspective, from a health perspective, kind of how some of these different ideas go together. And I think this is going to be a little bit unique because you have a lot of people focusing on fitness with no regard to your budget. If you sign up for some of these meal plans or programs, they will have you consuming, protein at every single meal. And if you look at the average budget for someone that's interested in fitness, it skyrockets through the roof. But I think there is a smarter way of doing it. I think there's a way that you can do it without breaking the bank. And we wanted to talk a little bit about our particular views on fitness in the scope of personal finance and also frugal living, which Brad and I are both big believers in.
Yeah, and it's both the nutrition side and certainly the exercise side as well. I mean, certainly if I had no care for money whatsoever, I would go out and join a $200 a month CrossFit box and do this, boot camp style exercise class that they have here in Richmond, which is, somewhere in the vicinity of $100 a month. So, I mean, you can spend a boatload of money, but I think we're going to show you how you can do it for free or close to free and still get, maximal maximal benefit from it, excuse me.
And this is a little bit of a conversation. I really haven't organized it, as well as I probably could have going into this, but I think it'll flow because what we're going to give you, these are all my thoughts concerning fitness. And as a way of challenging myself to do this for you and actually implement these, I have decided that I am going to do all of these things myself right now. And so right now it is January 26th when we're recording this. I plan on losing 30 pounds within 3 months. And actually I have a son that's going to be born right around April 22nd. So I plan on losing that 30 pounds by the time he's here. I've given myself the challenge.
That's so cool. And congrats again.
Thank you. One of the tips that I'm going to give y'all later on, but I'll tease it now, is whenever you decide to set a goal, tell everybody. That way you're super, super embarrassed if you don't do it.
Couldn't agree more. And I'm going to surprise Jonathan with this. I actually have one that I'm going to mention publicly as well. I've been actually in the last couple of days I Skyped with a buddy of mine, Brandon from the Mad Scientist, a couple of days ago, and I actually tried to get him to do this with me. He's doing a different workout program, so he wasn't into it. But I want the public accountability, and we're going to talk about that later.
Okay. One of the things that got me thinking about this was a conversation or a speech that JD Roth gave at a recent camp that we went to, the Money Mustache camp in southeastern Florida. And there were a lot of content creators and people that were working towards financial independence or were already financially independent, people that were interested in minimalism and being frugal, or at least, living an efficient lifestyle and using that to reach their goals. It was a very inspiring camp that we went to, and we met a lot of really cool people. And I got to meet JD Roth for the first time, and he, became famous maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago with the website Get Rich Slowly. At some point he sold that, stopped doing it, and came back. And now he has a website called Money Boss. And I've gone and checked it out, and it's pretty cool. But I was very excited to meet him. And he gave a talk on developing a personal mission statement. And it was a very cool talk. And he started by giving you a couple questions to really dig into. And it really challenged me on a couple levels, though I think I went a different way with it at the end than I initially thought I was going to, but I was really challenged by it. And I'm going to share a little bit of those ideas with you. And he was basically telling you that you would be advised to create this personal mission statement that would help you dictate the direction that your life was going to go. And I was starting to write mine. And about halfway through, he said, now I want to challenge you with this. Whatever you've got, I don't want you to make money your goal. I want you to assume you've already hit that. You've already achieved that in every single way. Money is not a concern. And it was a reboot. It took me a while to actually reset the clock and figure out, what would I do if money actually weren't a concern? What is actually important? Because a lot of my goals and a lot of things that I work for involve being financially independent, and financially independent is tied hand in hand with having money, or at least enough money so you don't need to worry about it. But what about when you actually get there? And I found that very challenging. First of all, to think in that way, and it was really good for me. So I owe him, just a thank you for throwing that out there. And I created something which I can share at another point. But one of the things I realized when I finished creating that and writing it down is that food was nowhere on that list. It was not for me to just enjoy eating lots of great, good food that tasted delicious. It just didn't even show up. And I had 8 or 9 bullet points. And for me, that was striking because, as time progresses and you get into your 30s, your metabolism starts to slow down and you get more comfortable with life and you get into a habit of just eating whatever comes in front of you. And, I've gained probably 20 or 30 pounds over the last several years, and they weren't going anywhere. And to be honest, I was kind of content with it at that point in time. But I realized, my goal, maybe it's to be a better person. It's to spend more time with family. It's to do more travel. It's to, but it was not food. And so I had to ask myself, am I eating to live, or am I living to eat? Because I've gained all this extra weight. And so, I came away from that. I got the son that I want to keep up with. I want to be just a healthy, energetic dad. I don't want to be a couch potato. I need to get this under check. So I created these 6 or 7 Post-it notes, and I just literally did this. I had in my desk, I wrote out these notes, and they're nothing fancy. They're very simple things. 1, I decided, I want to lose 30 pounds by the time my son is born. 2, I don't want to have any sugar for the next 3 months. I want to completely detox my brain from sugar. 3, my actual weight. I want to hit 167 pounds. Now I'm 5'8". I'm not a tall guy. I'm stocky. I got a fairly muscular build, but 167 pounds for me is really lean. 4, I want to make sure again that I'm eating to live. I'm not living to eat. I never want to get in that mindset. I don't want to graze. I want to be intentional. 5, I want to drink at least a half gallon of water per day to get there. 6, I want to go to bed on an empty stomach. So I'm going to talk through a little bit of those ideas with you and why I think they're important. But the final thing, the thing that ties them together, I have this picture of the ultrasound of my son. That is my goal. I'm going to get there before he's born. I'm going to go through these hurdles before he's born, and I'm going to be intentional about it. I'm going to make intentional decisions. When you're being intentional, when you're thinking through everything, you don't make these mistakes. You don't graze from one sweet to the next sweet. You don't have 8 pieces of pizza. It's when you relax your brain and you turn everything off and you're just passively going through life that you just start doing things that don't make sense for your long-term goals. And that's kind of where I'm approaching this from.
Yeah, I love how he said be intentional. That is the crucial point here. And, I can say I'm literally sitting here at Jonathan's computer desk and I'm looking at these 6 Post-it notes plus the be intentional plus the ultrasound. And it's inspiring to me. I mean, it's kind of spurred me on to come up with something similar. I mean, he cannot help but see this. Every time he sits down at that desk, this is a priority in his life. He has set this for April 22nd, when his first son is born, to lose 30 pounds and do all these other things. I mean, that is really, really cool. If you want to make a change in your life, that is a darn good way to do it.
Thanks. Yeah. And I'm excited about it. And you know what? When you're actually aware of what your thoughts are and where they're going and you're driving towards something, you're not going to screw it up. It is when you're not thinking about things. It's when you've gotten lazy. It's when you just have checked out and you're just going through the motions. You're going through life. You're letting life happen to you. You're not dictating anything. That's when things go off the rails. So as long as I'm living in this space of I'm going to be this person, I'm going to achieve this goal, I'm going to tell my tribe, the people that I am, passing on this information to, I'm going to be accountable to them. There's just no way for me to screw this up. You could put anything in front of me, but for the next 3 months, everything I do is going to be directed to that. And I'm going to walk you through that in a way that I think makes sense for you, both from a health perspective and from a personal finance perspective. And I have, I actually have a bachelor's in human nutrition, foods, and exercise. I have a pharmacy degree. I'm well educated. I'm very, very disciplined. But as I stated earlier, I don't have a lot of self-control. So to get around the self-control, you have to focus on being intentional and never let your brain go slack.
All right, Jonathan, one of the 6 Post-it notes that I thought was especially interesting was the no sugar for 3 months. That appeals to me instantly. I know we have diabetes in my family, and sugar and certainly carbohydrates are, on the front of my mind when I'm eating, and I'm trying to cut down on them significantly. I know I actually just this past year, and I'll talk about this throughout the episode, but this past year, I've actually gotten into the best shape of my adult life. And, I went to my physical at the beginning of 2016. So this was a year ago. And my, fasting glucose was actually a little high. It was in close to like the pre-diabetic stage, which was a little scary, especially since, my father, he is overweight, but he has diabetes, and he's struggled with it for 30 plus years at this point. So that was an alarm bell for me. And we'll talk about how I did get into shape in this past year, but I actually just went back to for my physical a couple of weeks ago, and my fasting glucose was down to 80, which is phenomenal.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
congratulations.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I was thrilled. It was just such a positive development. So, aside from all the benefits, physically and mentally that I've gotten from getting into shape this past year, I mean, that was just what solidified this, that, man, I'm definitely on the right track.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you would agree that eating to live, not living to eat. I mean, when you look at your goals for you and your family, you're a dad, you've got 2 kids, you want to spend your when you're 50, 60, 70, you want to have those years with them, and you want to do it in the same health that you are now, or at least as close to it as possible. And if you decide that food's your priority and you want to eat whatever you want to eat when you want to eat it, you're making a value choice, and potentially you're robbing your kids of those years that you could be an active, father, grandfather, for the opportunity to eat whatever you want.
Yeah, and that hits extremely close to home, because of my parents. And, this is not to throw them under the bus, certainly, but we mentioned in a prior podcast about how my wife Laura and I have tried to cut down on our food intake, and we've done it in very measured steps over the course of years. This is not like we're cutting everything down to 1,000 calories a day and that's that. It's a smart manner. But what kind of caused us to do that is, my parents are very overweight, both of them, and it severely impacts their quality of life. And they might not, I think in their heart of hearts they understand that, but they might not consciously understand how much it impacts them. But we see it, and my kids see it. Grandma and grandpa can't get on the floor and play, but Laura's parents can, and it's not a big surprise why, and they have decided that they want to live to eat. Okay. And, obviously people make their own judgments. It's not my place to tell them that they're doing it wrong, though I try very hard. So maybe it is my place, but, they go out to eat all the time. They go out with friends, they go out by themselves. They get value out of that. I think it's a horrible waste of money. I think it's a horrible way to get fat real quick, but They've decided that they want to do that. And, I don't want to be 65 and not be able to play with my grandkids. Just as simple as that. I don't want to be 45 and be the fat dad and not be able to play with my kids. I want to go out and, if my daughter is going to start cross country as a, sophomore in high school, I want to go run with her in the woods, and I can do that today. And I can guarantee you I'll be able to do that when I'm 45.
Yeah, absolutely. The other person I was impressed by at the Camp Mustache that we went to was Money Mustache. And, we were talking a little bit about what he uses, and I think he's documented it on his blog at some point. And basically he's following a form of low carb dieting, and he is fine with the fats and the proteins, but he really tries to minimize a lot of the carbs, or at least make them healthier options. And having done fitness many different ways over the last 10 years, there's not a one answer for everybody. There are plenty of ways to do it, but you do need to look for what your triggers are. And you need to, and I think the biggest thing is figuring out what's happening to your brain. Because if you start eating any food that is turning your brain off and moving you into that grazing mode, you're going to have a problem. And I know for a fact that for me, it's processed sugar. It's not the carbs that are in sweet potatoes. I'm not going to have more than I need to of those. It's going to be the bread, and it's going to be the sweets and the chocolate and, all those sorts of things. So for me, my number one thing is I cannot do processed sugar for at least a short period of time, because your brain treats it like a drug. It really does. It breaks it down into a chemical that is indistinguishable from drugs. And then what happens after you consume it is that your body releases a chemical called dopamine. It's a pleasure chemical. And so it's essentially acting like crack for your brain. If that's your problem, if you have to have sweets, you have become addicted to sugar. And it takes you a while to break free of that. And it's amazing how once you break, I remember at one point in my life, I was down below 10% body fat. I mean, I was extraordinarily lean for what I can normally achieve. And I had not had any sugar within the last 6 to 8 months. And the idea of having sugar actually made me sick. I mean, that's where you get if you retrain your brain to like certain types of foods.
Yeah, and I know just this past week, actually, my wife made a pan of brownies. Okay, and so when Jonathan was saying about your brain lighting up as if it was a drug, I know this because I literally had this happen 72 hours ago. I don't eat sweets really all that much. It's never been my thing for whatever reason, but so I don't eat that much in the way of sugar. But man, these brownies look good. Yeah. So I walked over to the pan, I grabbed a bite, and it was like I could almost feel my brain lighting up, and I'm like, wow, I need more of these.
Yes.
So I grabbed 2 more little pieces. They were these thin brownies, so I grabbed 2 or 3 more pieces and just house them. It was crazy.
And you're not responding to hunger. It's not your body saying, I was hungry and this is filling that sensation. Rather, you're having a chemical addiction. Your brain is wanting more dopamine to be released. And so you are being tricked, essentially, because you have rewired your brain to crave these.
Yeah. And, just to kind of piggyback on that, what we did was, Laura and I said to each other, we have to get these things out of here. And we just literally, we actually froze them. We cut them into little bite-sized portions and froze them. And what that means is when you actually are craving one, you have to make an intentional decision to take it out of the freezer and let it defrost. It's not just, how cool is that, right?
Like, you all have so much more and Laura does, from what I've heard. She has so much more self-control than I do. It's very impressive.
She's amazing.
I don't think that a lot of the people that have problems with weight, when you would be able to do what they just did. I think that they have more self-control than you probably do. If you're like me, that is not going to be enough to stop you. Laura can walk away from one piece of pizza. We've talked about that. But the thing there is you got to figure out what you can control. And then when you can't control it, you got to figure out a life hack to subvert it so it doesn't continue to be an issue for you.
Yeah. And it could be as simple as, filling yourself up on something healthy that you actually enjoy, or drinking more water like Jonathan had, a half gallon of water per day. Jonathan, I'm sure, can talk more intelligently on this, but if you're drinking water before a meal, you're somewhat filling yourself up before, and you're not going to eat as much. It's just, fairly simple.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. And a lot of times when you think you're hungry, you're actually just thirsty. There's 2 different ways that people approach fitness. One of them is these crazy diets. And, if you want to be a bodybuilder, I think you probably do need to consume a massive amount of protein. But if you just want to be ripped or lean, that protein's not necessary. And in fact, there's a lot of people that want to be a bodybuilder that consume a massive amount of protein. And because they don't have their macros right and their diet right, they're just overweight and muscular. I mean, it's not attractive. It's not something you'd want to emulate. But most of us recognize that there is something pretty much universally attractive about being lean and in shape. And the great thing is that does not require an expensive diet. It requires a controlled diet, but it totally fits within this frugal price model that we want to build out. So, be a bodybuilder and broke, or be completely ripped and, have a fat wallet. The tagline we used was have a skinny waist and a fat wallet. And really what we're hinting at is that you have the ability to be in any shape you want on a very frugal budget, and, just focus on eating these healthy foods, maybe some of which we'll talk about, using some of the techniques that we talked about, but it does not have to break the bank.
Yeah, and that's, again, both on the nutrition side and on the exercise side. There's two legs to this. And the exercise side, certainly just with body weight exercises, and we'll talk about that later, you don't need fancy equipment. You really don't. You can, at most get a $15 pull-up bar to put in a door frame in your house, get it for $15 at Walmart, and push-ups and squats. I mean, that's a pretty good set of exercises. You throw in some running, some, sprinting even. Man, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Right?
No, absolutely. And I've gone both ways with that. I've done the fancy gyms. I've got the home gym, and I've done just the calisthenics, the body weight stuff. It's all going to work, but it only works if you do it.
Yeah.
All right. So the first thing is we have to desensitize the brain. If you are grazing, if you are just eating and you have no idea when you're full and when you're sated, you have an addiction, and you need to get rid of that. So you know what? The cheat meal is just not going to work for you. And in order for you to say, you know what, I'm going to be okay not having a cheat meal and just being 100% on this thing, you have to figure out what's really important. And so for that reason, I like the idea of starting with a mission statement and deciding what is your goal, putting that as your priority, and then come up with something really powerful. Like for me, I have this picture of this ultrasound of my son that's going to be born. And I don't know what it is about that, but by stacking that with my postcards, it's crazy powerful. And then I look at those and these final bullet points, you write all these different little goal sheets down, this idea of being intentional. When you're being intentional and when you're just going through life. What if you could just stay in that intentional mindset? And so to do that, you know what? It's time to step on the scale again. You may have not wanted to do it. You need to know where you start. You probably need that reality check. And for me, it was just stepping on that scale and seeing, I'm 197 pounds. Wow. I remember when I was 165. I have a lot of work to do. So, that's 30 pounds. And the next thing you do is you're going to need some accountability. You need to tell as many people as possible that this is important to you, that this is the focus. This is the most important thing for a short period of time. And there are definitely ways that you can make this a lifestyle, and I encourage that, but there's something really cool about doing a transformation.
Yeah, and just to kind of touch on that accountability, in this case, Jonathan and I are going public with it. Something could be posted on your Facebook page, right? Tell your friends, get a group of, 5 to 10 people in an email chain that you keep updated, or that are also doing some kind of fitness goal, right? It could be group accountability. There are even some kind of websites, I know Tim Ferriss talks about this, that are kind of like betting websites. So essentially, like, I think it's Stick, STIKK, I believe. And, you're more or less publicly saying, I'm going to do X, and if not, I have to pay X number of hundreds of dollars, and you make it up. So it's a bet essentially. So
that's cool.
And it could be like the money is sent to somebody that you absolutely loathe, or some organization that you loathe, right? So, pick great. Your political persuasion or whatever, and send it to the other guys, right?
Oh no.
Or,
that's funny.
We're not going to go down
that's
that
hilarious,
rabbit hole, right?
But that's hilarious. Yeah.
I mean, that is motivation. So, I mean, there, just like anything, there are lots of different ways to do this, but man, that accountability is huge.
All right. So Brad, why don't you go ahead and tell us, what is your public goal?
All right. So my public goal is actually I have two of them. So one, in the back of my mind for the last couple of years, I have these ideals of fitness. Okay. And the first one is pretty silly, but just bear with me here. I want to be able to do a set of 15 pull-ups. Okay. So to me, that's a marker of fitness. Whether I'm right or wrong, I think someone that can do a set of 15 pull-ups in a row, regular overhand pull-ups, is a pretty fit person, upper body wise.
Okay.
So that is the one half. And I think the more important half, and this is something that has always dogged me. Okay. I'm going to kind of give a little sidebar story here is how quickly I can run a mile. Okay. So to me, and I might get into some territory that people disagree with here, but when people go out and run half marathons or marathons, I'm always impressed to some degree that just that they can do that. That is a feat to me, and it's something I never want to do. I probably physically, could. Maybe we can talk about that, but I'll say I couldn't do. It just doesn't appeal to me at all. But it also, I see lots of people who are out of shape who run half marathons and marathons. It's not a marker of fitness. To me, it's just they accomplished something that's remarkable. So I'm not taking anything away. But to me, the 6-minute mile has always been this elusive thing. Now, obviously, professional runners can run in, 4 minutes or sub 5 and, they would laugh at a 6-minute mile. But for a regular average person, if you can run a 6-minute mile, that's pretty phenomenal. I don't know too many adults who can run a 6-minute mile.
Okay. That's cool.
So, that has always, I was a soccer player back in high school. And, I think I was in pretty decent shape, ran a decent amount. And this is, like I said, has dogged me for years is senior year of high school. We ran a time mile and it was like, literally, I knew it at the time. It was the last time mile in all likelihood that I would ever run. And I think I got like 6 minutes and 4 seconds and I kind of like loafed it at the end. And I was like, oh, come on, man. Why didn't you just sprint it in? You could have got, 5:58 or something. So,
well, you were saving it for your 30s.
Yeah, right. So now at 37, I want to get a 6-minute mile. So, honestly, I don't have a baseline number right now. I think I'm probably.
What about for the pull-ups?
I think I can do, if I really push it, I'm probably at 9, I would say.
Okay.
So I'm not all that far off, but honestly, like the difference between 9 and 15 is fairly significant, or I believe at least at this point. So yeah, I'm probably at a baseline of maybe 7-minute mile, 7.5, give or take. It's more of a mental thing for me, honestly. I think physically I could run a 7-minute mile pretty easily, but the difference between a 7-minute mile and a 6-minute mile to me is this huge gulf. Sure. So that's why this is a stretch goal for, both sides of it.
Have you put a time on it?
I want to do this by I hadn't thought about it, honestly. Now hearing your April 22nd makes mine look pretty pathetic. I wanted to do it by the end of 2017.
Okay.
So that'll be my loose goal.
We'll check in with you in April and see how far you've gone.
Maybe I'll set something more ambitious than that, but that's where I am right now.
So what I want to do with the remainder of the time that we're going to spend together today is walk through step by step every single little life hack that I've pieced together for this, because I know I can do this. I am capable of doing this. And at the same time, I know that I am very average in every single way. There's nothing particularly special about me. So I know that anything that I can do, if I can explain to you what my thought process is, if you want to grab a piece of that or all of that, you can do something similar in your own life. And there's different things that I figured out over time. One of them is that, and it goes back to the grazing, most of the time that I eat, I am eating because I think it's either time to eat or my brain is telling me that I should eat. Now, neither of those have to do with your body actually needing food in order to survive. And so just like I told you that I wanted to desensitize my brain to sugar, I want to focus on being able to be okay with having a slightly empty stomach, because your body and your brain gets addicted to the feeling of being full. And the problem with all the processed food that we eat over time is that your body goes from just wanting to be full to actually being bloated. So it's happy and bloated at the same time. And it wants you to continue to eat until you feel sick. You get to a weird place. And so in order to combat that, to get back to normal, you really need to start getting used to the idea of just being slightly hungry and that being okay. And there's some extra perks to that I'm going to unpack for you as I go through this. But just to convince you, first of all, you need to realize, if you're listening to this in America, we are the wealthiest country on earth right now. We have very, very low levels of food insecurity, like people that don't know where their next meal is coming from. Most of the population has that covered. And so what I'm saying is that most of us have forgotten that it's okay to miss a meal. In other countries, people go days without eating. In many parts of the world, and just from a physiological perspective, your body can survive up to 30 days or more probably without food. As long as you have water, you can survive. And if you're extremely overweight, That's stored energy. So your body has all these extra mechanisms to cannibalize all that before it starts attacking all the energy that you have in your organs that you actually need. So if you're overweight, if you have a 40-inch waist, you have a massive amount of stored energy, no matter how tall you are and what your specific situation is. If you have a 40-inch waist or higher, you have a lot of stored energy. So it's not going to hurt you to have an empty stomach for a little bit. And there's some real power to suddenly being okay with that. And so one of the challenges for me was twofold. One is to be able just to go to bed on an empty stomach. Now, I don't mean that you're focusing on anorexia or something like that. I'm just saying that it's okay to go to bed on an empty stomach. And what you might find the first time, your brain will fight you on this. It will make you think that you're miserable, that you're horrible, that things are going horribly wrong. But then you know what? It takes you an extra 20 minutes to go to sleep, maybe even go to bed early because you don't want to have to deal with it. And the next morning, it's weird. First of all, you're going to pop out of bed like a bat out of hell. That just happens. It's a flight or fight syndrome. It's your body is telling you to go search for food. But the other thing is, because you've gone now this extended period, you've been fighting this psychological battle while you sleep, the receptors in your brain have already calmed down a little bit. And you'll notice you're actually less hungry when you wake up in the morning than when you went to bed at night.
That's very interesting. So I guess my question, and probably what you're asking out there in the audience, is what does this mean, go to bed on an empty stomach? What time would one have to have dinner?
Yeah.
Are there specified times?
Yeah. If you're overweight, there's a good chance you're doing a lot of late night snacking, and you're doing it because you're hungry late at night for whatever reason, or you're craving something. Stop it. Just stop it. And if you're doing it while I'm hungry, go to bed on an empty stomach. And if you're eating it at 1 a.m. in the morning, go to bed earlier. What are you doing up at 1 a.m.? I mean, if you need to be for work, okay, that's fine. You need to work on another trigger. But if you're just staying up to watch TV, what if instead you just change your schedule around? You followed some of the other advice we said, where we told you most of TV is a waste of time. If you're spending all your time watching TV and you're staying up till 1 a.m. to go through your latest Netflix burner, maybe you cut that out. You go to bed on an empty stomach, and instead you start your day at 5 a.m. and you work on some of the, you just change your whole life cycle. That's not a crazy thing to suggest, especially if you say the most important thing in my life from now to April 22nd is losing 30 pounds.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so, I mean, I guess the other way to put this is just don't snack after dinner if you can avoid it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, is that a succinct way?
Yeah, and that's going to go with the sugar. I mean, no one's snacking on salad, right? You're snacking on the brownies, on the ice cream. So you've got to get rid of that stuff. I mean, you got to throw it out. So that was one little life hack there. Go to bed on an empty stomach. 2, we got to do something about keeping you full for longer. And that is where the water comes in. Brad's over here drinking his water right next to me. Well done, sir. Well done. Your brain will substitute thirst for hunger. So if you don't have enough water in your system, your brain will tell you that you're hungry. And so you can get around that just by drinking, half gallon to gallon of water a day. I've done both. I've done as much as 2 gallons a day when I was at my leanest. I don't think you actually need to do 2 gallons. You're just going to be going to the bathroom every 10, 15 minutes. I think it's wildly inefficient. But most of America is dehydrated, or they're substituting soda and juice and all the sweet liquids of the world for water. And that is not a substitute. Coca-Cola is not a substitute for water. Diet Coca-Cola is not a substitute for water. So I'm not saying you can't have any, although I would encourage you to go cold turkey. But for the most part, you need to be drinking a half gallon of water a day. And you know what? Over the period of the month, your body will actually, your brain will change again. And it will start to crave water because you're rewiring these neurons that have been misfiring for months.
Yeah, that rings true with my life, certainly. I drink probably about a gallon of water a day minimum. Don't really drink any kind of sugary soda. I mean, I can't remember, other than maybe like a rum and Coke I had at a wedding a couple years ago. I can't remember the last time I had a soda. Yeah, I mean, my general intake of liquid is just simply water, and I drink tea without added sugar in it, maybe a splash of milk. And, I'm not a crazy person. I normally, maybe have a beer or a glass of wine at night, 4 or 5 times a week. So, but I mean, that's simply it. I don't know. What about you, Jonathan?
No, it's the same thing. I mean, back in the day, I grew up with soda and Sprite, and those are my favorites, and, Gatorades and all that stuff. But at some point, as I started pursuing fitness, and it really even carried over to me, even in a more passive, type of way of looking at it, I drink water. I drink 100% water. And at this point, it's all I really know. And if I start drinking, I don't think I could drink a soda a day. I wouldn't even think it's a possibility. But I know that a lot of people do only drink soda, because if you go to the grocery store, they have an entire aisle dedicated to your soda of choice.
Yeah, once you give up soda, it's kind of sickening to even think about that. Same as Jonathan. I mean, my parents, we used to buy 2-liter bottles of Coke by the, crateful essentially, and, drank a lot of it. But now it's just, it's abhorrent to even think about it, honestly.
And when you look at people that come in, with diabetes or hypertension to the doctor's office, especially with diabetes, they're always overweight. I mean, there's some people that have some genetic components. So type 1 diabetes, that's not what we're talking about. But type 2 diabetes, 98% of the time, 99% of the time, it's just related to weight. And you start eating so much and it's not related to actual hunger that your body just stops being able to do what it's supposed to do with it. So it just breaks it down into sugar. It breaks down the bread into sugar. It breaks down the Coke, which is sugar, into sugar, and then at some point it gets taken out of the stomach and it just stays in the blood. And at some point it can't get it out to where it needs to go. So it just stays there, turning your blood into maple syrup. And, then that starts to cause problems with your legs and your feet and everything else. So your body is telling you you've got a problem, but the sugar has this effect on the brain, causing that release of dopamine, and you become addicted to that. So you start ignoring the signals that your body is telling you. And when it goes too far, you just can't come back from it.
Yeah. And, I'm certainly not a certified anything with nutrition. And I know Jonathan, is, but, just in my own life, I can say what I've done to avoid these kind of, sugar issues is, A, cut down on any kind of added sugar. And B, for me, it's the carbohydrates is where I had an issue. And, you're not going to see many lean people, ultra lean people who are just, tossing down bagels and loaves of bread by the handful, right? I mean, most people, and, again, this is kind of outside the scope of this one podcast, but, for me, cutting down on carbohydrates has been a huge benefit. And not only that, but I don't have the ups and downs that I used to have. So I eat a breakfast with good fats, all right? And fat has been vilified in the public consciousness. And it's literally, in my estimation, it's because of the word fat. If we just called it anything else, if we called that dietary component Jupiter or anything else, it wouldn't be vilified. It's literally vilified. It has nothing to do with the fat, what are they?
Well, if you're having avocado with your eggs in the morning, you're not going to be getting fat.
No, you're not. I mean, if you're eating avocado and eggs, that's what I eat, actually. I eat that, or, I'll have a handful of walnuts. Actually, we talk about Costco. We just bought a huge bag of walnuts, and, you only need 3 or 4 walnuts to have a nice, satisfying snack. And, that is a healthy fat. Man, when you talk about, to me, the biggest issue with the American diet is breakfast. Yeah. Think about the breakfast foods that, we consider quote unquote breakfast, right? Bagels, bread and toast, or cereals, especially sugary cereals. That's just doubling down on the how awful it can be. I mean, what this does is it fills you up and you have a crash, 90 to 120 minutes later, and you're starving again. I mean, think about how many of you have bagels for breakfast and then are hungry at 10 a.m.
That's the part that kills you, is the crash. And usually that's related to how quickly your body can absorb the sugar, because the faster in, faster out. So if you're eating very simple sugars, just straight table sugar, or, a Snickers bar, to some degree a bagel as well, if it's not a whole wheat bagel, a lot of these really processed sugars and simple carbohydrates, they go straight into your brain. They cause that sensation of pleasure, and then you crash and you need more to get that sensation back. And that's a lot. And energy goes along with that. You have this energy rush and then this energy crash.
Yeah, Jonathan is exactly right. And it's nice having an expert here sitting next to me to kind of, put the official spin on what I know kind of anecdotally, which is, I eat something that's satisfying in the morning. Eggs pretty often. Avocado is a great thing to add. I mean, those are the staples of my breakfast. And I'm not snacking in the morning. I'm just simply not.
And if you're feeling really sluggish in the morning, that's probably because you had too much to eat late at night. I found this over and over again, and I guarantee if you try just going to bed on an empty stomach, you are going to wake up in the morning with so much energy. So if you say, I just don't ever have the energy to get up in the morning and make a good breakfast, try going to bed on an empty stomach. You will wake up again like a bat out of hell.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm gonna check that out for sure. And just the final word on this is, for breakfast, eggs are another thing similar to fats that have been vilified, as they're going to make your cholesterol rise and all this other nonsense. I think, in the last couple of years, it's come out that literally that science was fabricated. All right.
I saw that article.
Total BS. And it literally is untrue. So we've all been led to believe that eggs are terrible for you because your cholesterol is going to rise. It's simply not true.
Well, I think what they used to say is that it wasn't necessarily the egg, it was just the whole egg. And so you would need to separate out the yolk from the white. I'll be honest, I used to do that. I've come back from that. Now I just use the whole egg. And there's a benefit to a cost perspective too. And you get a lot of good nutrients from that yolk and you're not wasting food. So yeah, I don't think you need to separate out the yolk from the white.
No, I agree. And I think, eggs at last check at our local Wegmans, they were 60 cents for a dozen. So we're talking 5 cents for an egg. So I have 2 eggs in the morning. That is 10 cents. That is a heck of a good breakfast, a whole lot better than that bagel you're getting at the local bagel place.
And I've decided, I've really tried to not hate on any particular food group. I think there's room for moderation and everything. I'm still okay with doing, oatmeal for breakfast. I'm still okay with doing a fruit smoothie for breakfast, if it's got banana and frozen fruit in it and yogurt and maybe some milk and, those sorts of things. You just need to know what your triggers are, though. And if you're having the crash that Brad was describing and the cravings, then that's going to have to go because you can't afford that because you're being intentional and you can't have anything that's making your life more difficult.
Yeah, I agree. And I am not set in, I'm not doctrinaire about anything. So for me, it's not, no carbohydrates. I'm not a crazy person about anything. I just want to live my life. I want to, put little life hacks in that are going to work a little bit better. And when you compound a couple dozen of these life hacks in all aspects of your life is going to get better. So, listen, I brought a sandwich here for our little podcast recording. I have a turkey sandwich on a roll. All right. So I could have not had that roll, but I want the roll. All right. I eat pretty well. I exercise. I'm, reasonably lean. I'm not worried about one turkey sandwich.
Right. No, that's exactly right. And I wouldn't be either. If you really want an in-depth analysis, I'm going to post on our website, choosefi.com/healthyliving101. You can also just go to the website, click on experiments. There'll be a page for it, and I'll document exactly the progress along with meal plans and that sorts of thing. But what I really want you to hear out of this is what we're actually doing. And I think a lot of times you read stuff online and it's what they would do or what they think you should do, but it's not actually what they did because nobody has time to do all the stuff that they put in these packages. What this is for somebody that's busy, that wants to be intentional. And, it's tying into that idea that we've talked to you about, simplicity, flexibility, those two things. And it needs to meet the common sense test. I'm not going to spend 2 hours making one gourmet meal that's going to have minimal impact. It's going to be a very simple meal because my number one thing is, again, not living to eat. It's losing 30 pounds by April 22nd, 2017. Everything is focused on that. So now we've talked through several bullet points. I've weighed myself initially. And if I'm going to lose 30 pounds in 3 months, I need to lose right around 3 pounds a week. Now that's a little bit extreme. I would tell most of you, really, you should be shooting for 1 to 2 pounds a week and do it slowly. And you don't have to do everything that I'm saying. You can just pick 1 or 2 of those things. Like for instance, if you are gaining weight and the only thing you drink is soda, if you just cut that one thing out and you just replace it with water, you're going to lose 20 pounds over the course of a year. I mean, if you just that one thing and you cut out the late night snacking and you went to bed on an empty stomach, you're going to lose a few pounds over the course of the next couple of months. But if you want to lose 30 pounds in 3 months, I'm doing all of these things because I can't afford to miss a single window. So my next life hack is, I told you about how I'm going to go to bed on an empty stomach. I'm going to need a little bit extra if I'm going to hit 3 pounds a week. That is an intense goal, especially since I'm not running marathons. I'm not doing Michael Phelps swim workouts. I'm doing very little cardio. I have to create a calorie deficit because there's 2 sides of the equation. There's what you eat. What is your basic metabolism? All of us have different metabolisms based on our height, our muscle mass, our own genetics, that sort of thing. And then there's what you eat and the calories, that you take in versus what your basic metabolism burns. So that's just the in-out scenario. If you take in less than your basic metabolism burns, you're going to lose weight. But then the other half of that is how much exercise are you doing? And I'm going to do a fair amount of exercise, but I'm not going to go crazy with it. And so I have to focus on these dietary components. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the exercise plan in a second. But my biggest life hack here is I'm going to fast a full 24-hour fast 1 day a week. And that goes back to the desensitizing the brain that I was talking about earlier. And what I usually do is I'm going to game that around when I am at work. I have a 12-hour work shift once a day. So I'm very busy that one day. And I'm going to consume a lot of caffeine on that one day. So black coffee, totally fine. But I'm not going to consume anything else. I'm going to have my caffeine. I'm going to have tons of water. and I'm just going to grind my way through that day. And then I'm going to go to bed early that night. As soon as I can get to bed, I'm going to go to bed. And you know what? I've instantly built into my day a 2,000 calorie deficit into my diet just by not eating that on that one day. And then the next morning I'll wake up, and instead of binge eating, I'm just going to have a normal breakfast.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I'd love to hear the your report back on this in a future podcast on specifically how those fasts go. I know I had followed, I guess the guy's name is Dave Asprey. He's famous for bulletproof coffee. Many of you have probably heard about that. He also talks about intermittent fasting, which is similar to this. It's kind of you can do it day by day though. So it's essentially eating during a 6-hour window. Now, in most cases, it would be, let's say, you eat lunch at noon, you eat dinner at 6, and then you don't eat again until the following day at noon. Okay, so that's, you're not fasting for any extended period of time. It's essentially you're not having breakfast is more or less what that means.
Yeah.
So I did test that out for a little bit. I found that I was getting like mid-morning kind of headaches, and it didn't work for my body. Though what Jonathan mentioned about adding in the black coffee, that doesn't get you out of a fasting state. And I found, and also actually,
you could also add a piece of fruit in there too, like an apple. That would be the other half of that component, like just the black coffee. And if you needed a little sugar rush or something, you could have a single apple at some point in the day.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would have liked to have known that for sure. Another thing, what Dave Asprey is famous for is, again, the bulletproof coffee, which is black coffee and actually adding in very high quality butter. So you're more or less like blending it up. You're also putting in some like coconut oil or MCT oil and literally blending it up into this frothy deliciousness. It's really quite tasty. It sounds a little extreme if you've never heard of it. But
although I've done intermittent fasting, I haven't heard of that specific recipe, so I might check that out.
Yeah, you really should. I think you'd enjoy it. Just from a taste perspective, it makes your black coffee dramatically better. So, you're buying like unsalted, high quality butter. I think the brand that I use is Kerrygold. That's, the one that Dave Asprey mentions. And yeah, you literally just blend it up in the blender, and it's fantastic. And it doesn't get you out of that fasting state. So I guess, this again is outside of my, my zone of knowledge, but maybe Jonathan can speak on it or, in a future episode. But essentially what these people are trying to get into is this state of ketosis, it's called.
Yes.
So your brain is operating, I guess, on ketones at that point, and you're in a fat burning state as opposed to just burning, I guess, glucose from carbs and, the other nonsense that you're normally eating. So your body is essentially burning fat. And I'll turn it over to
you said it. Yeah, you said it. No, you said it exactly right. Basically, when you eat your food, your body breaks it down. It sits in your stomach for a while, then it gets absorbed, and then your body goes into a rest and digest mode, and it stays there for several hours. But if you do what they're talking about with the intermittent fasting, because there's this extended window that's outside of a 12-hour period where you haven't had food, so from 6 the following evening to 6 in the morning would be 12 hours. And anything past that, you could potentially be in the state of ketosis. And at that point, the idea is that you're actually, for a short period of time, you're burning fat for energy. And if you do that consistently day after day, that means that you're getting 4 hours every single day where you're just burning fat for energy. And then over time, you can channel that into real weight loss. Sorry.
Yeah, so that kind of doubles down on what Jonathan was mentioning, which is not only has he had a huge caloric deficit from just simply not eating for a 24-hour period, but his body is also now in a fat-burning state. So it really should be, a significant added boost of, benefit there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've done intermittent fasting. I'm fine with it. I hated not eating till 12 o'clock at lunchtime, and every day of the week. And so I've done that, and I'm not done with it completely. I just, if you're the audience or trying to figure it out, you can take either that or exactly what I'm doing and figure out which one works better for you. I know for a fact that as long as I keep my diet really clean and then I throw this one fasting day in, I will lose 2 to 3 pounds a week as long as I actually do it.
Yeah, that's cool. And, I'd love to see you, if you are going to try out the bulletproof coffee, to test out an intermittent fast, just, maybe once a week or once every other week, just to see how it works for you. I found, I know I mentioned when I was doing intermittent fasting generally that it gave me headaches, but once I threw in the bulletproof coffee in the morning, that completely alleviated that issue.
I'm definitely going to do that bulletproof coffee. I didn't realize that it tasted good. I think that was the thing. When you started talking about throwing butter in your coffee, I was a little skeptical.
Yeah, it sounds nuts, but man, it's really quite good.
We'll put a link in the show notes to that recipe. All right, so let's see. So now I've covered some of my strategies. We've talked about breakfast. We've talked about water. We've talked about going to bed on an empty stomach. We've talked about throwing in a single day of fasting. And on that day of fasting, really focusing on increasing your caffeine and your water intake. The next thing is you should always have meals prepared. You cannot afford to go to a fridge and not have anything in there where you have to figure out what you're going to make because you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah, and we definitely talked about this on a prior podcast where we talked about our ultimate Costco meal plan and, how we're trying to save money on food. And I know I mentioned how my wife and I are very intentional about how we make our food. So, essentially, if we can cook 2 meals a week, we're always making it to have leftovers at least for a second night, each of those meals. And then almost invariably, there's, a 5th person meal, if you will, no, actually a 9th person meal, available for leftovers. So I'll have that and Laura will have a slice of pizza. So, literally from cooking 2 meals, we have 5 days worth of meals. So, there's no scrambling at 5:15 for, oh no, let's order Chinese food and, devour a couple of combination plates, where we have our food and it's very obvious.
Absolutely. And so we do very similar things. We do actually portion it out and put it in the individual Tupperware containers. I have a set amount that's available to me. One thing you will not have heard is that I have not actually counted any calories yet. I'm not opposed to it. I've done it both ways. I just find the mental hurdle of actually calculating it all out to be more time consuming than I want to spend. And in general, I try to focus on just doing a healthy portion. And when I've blown diets in the past, when I've failed in the past, it's not because I measured out 3 ounces instead of 4 ounces of chicken. It's because I went off the rails and I had the pizza or I had the Chipotle. I had the really big meal that was an 800 to 1500 calorie diet. And that screwed me up, messed up all my progress for the whole week. And then instead of just getting back on the bandwagon and going forward, I snowballed with more mistakes the following day. And then at some point I'm like, well, it's just no point. You can't do that.
Yeah, agreed. It's so mentally taxing to be on a diet, if you will. I know I've seen my mom struggle with, using different types of diets, Weight Watchers and that type of thing back in the day. And, honestly, in my anecdotal experience, I've never seen someone stay on one of those programs and stay thin for 30 years because it's this deprivation mindset all the time where, oh, I could not possibly eat these 50 different things that I love so much. I don't think like that at all. There is nothing that I don't eat. If I want a slice of pizza for dinner, I'll have a slice of pizza. If I want 2 beers on a Saturday night and we're at a brewery or something, I'm not worried about the calories. I mean, there are people that literally like drink Miller Lite as opposed to a craft brew, craft beer because it's fewer calories. I think that is so losing, the forest for the trees and cutting, dealing with these tiny little details that are just irrelevant in the large scheme of things. And
in life, I'm the same as Brad. And I have a very controlled life. When I'm actually focusing on maintaining my weight at home, I eat certain foods. And normally, I'm not talking right now over the next 3 months, I can't afford even a Miller Lite beer. I can't afford anything. There'll be hardcore. There'll be no cheating 100% from now till April 22nd. I'm going to be on point every single meal, every single day. But, outside of that window, when I'm not doing a quote unquote transformation, when life is happening, you focus on eating the clean foods 90% of the time. And that gives you the flexibility to do whatever the hell you want the rest of the time. When you go out with your friends, you don't have to be the one that is eating the broccoli. You can have a piece of pizza, but then in a perfect world, you also have some self-control where you can say, you know what, this was good. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this draft beer. I enjoyed this piece of pizza or 2 pieces of pizza. And then you walk away from it. It's this balance of I can just have 1 piece and okay because I'm okay, not being bloated. I don't need to be bloated to be satisfied.
Right. And you're also not going to feel bad about yourself for having a slice of pizza because in the large grand scheme of things, it's irrelevant.
Right.
You can have those little splurges because you're being intentional about your diet and you're putting in these little hacks that are going to make the framework, the 90%, like Jonathan just mentioned, you're going to make that 90% work for you. This is not rocket science, right? This is stop eating bagels and bread for breakfast. It's put in some more vegetables, right? Put in some more healthy fats. Eat some more protein. Don't drink sodas and sugary drinks. I mean, again, this is not rocket science. But I mean, if that's your diet where you're doing all those horrible things, you're not going to be able to go cold turkey tomorrow on all of them. It's just not going to work. But just make one change tomorrow. Make another change 2 or 3 weeks from now. Make a third change a month from that. And I guarantee you, you're not going to miss it. You're going to look back, just like I look back on those days where I drank a 2-liter bottle of soda in 48 hours. And that was my life. I look at that and I'm horrified.
When was the last time you bought a 2-liter bottle of soda?
Never.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly,
no,
in my entire adult life, I have not bought a 2-liter bottle of soda. We bought I think we bought 6 cans for like rum and Coke.
And you tried to find the small cans,
the
right?
Tiny little 6-ounce cans. And that's all I need. We still have 4 of them left.
Same, exactly. I think when we're doing like mixed drinks or something, I'll have some in the back. But yeah, I can't remember. I don't think I've ever bought as an adult a 2-liter soda. When you see people that are healthy or that are somewhat lean as opposed to morbidly obese, you're going to find there's certain things they do that the other people don't do. And the other people accept, the morbidly obese people accept that this is normal, this behavior. And no, not everybody's doing that. Not everybody is only drinking soda. Not everybody is having a third helping of ice cream. Not everybody is sitting on the couch for 8 hours a day watching Westworld. You have, there's probably a better way of doing things. And if you can see it, it would make sense for you as well. And we talked about that one, but it's so cool. I didn't really focus on it. Learn to like black coffee. That's a big one. A lot of people feel like they have to have a flavor or a sweetener in it. That's kind of one of those mental things. If you learn to like black coffee, it gives you some real advantages because that's another drink that you can consume that's very low calorie, minimal, and it gives you essentially this energy replacement for when you might be crashing because you're staying on all this food, on these specific foods. So anyways, that's just a final little life hack. So, all right, Brad, what are your final thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we've touched on the nutrition side really, really well. I mean, I'd like to talk about the fitness and movement side, certainly for the rest of our time here. I think just general movement is important. Again, not to pick on my parents, but they don't move that much, right? And it's kind of this horrible cycle where they're overweight because they eat a lot and not didn't move a ton, and now they're it's just getting worse and worse. So I try to build movement into my day as much as possible. Now that could mean just literally when I worked at an office job, it was getting up every hour or every other hour and walking around the building for 5 or 10 minutes. Now, a lot of people are going out for, even in this day and age, smoke breaks or something awful like that. You can take a 5-minute fitness break. It's really not that hard. Just get up, go to the bathroom and then walk around the office building for a couple of months. Honestly, this is one of those kind of little funny life hack stories, but there was one other guy in my office building of, hundreds of people who would walk around the office. We became friends over the course of, a year or so. And it wound up that my wife, Laura, is now working for his company because I literally met this guy in the hallway walking around our building. All right. So, I'm not going to guarantee you that, you're going to get some kind of networking effect, but man, how cool is that? I was doing something good for myself and, even just get up and just do 2 squats or 5 squats, just something to get your muscles firing. You're sitting there all day long, just not getting up. Just try to move a little bit more. Just some of the stuff that's built into our culture is so negative. I always think about, and maybe my family's crazy, but we talked about getting a good parking spot. Does that ring true to you, Jonathan? Have you ever heard that?
Well, I never had one, but yeah, I've heard people talk about it.
Yeah. So what is a good parking spot in American parlance? A good parking spot is right next to the store.
Yeah.
Now, in health, there are people that would literally circle.
I have seen that.
Right?
I have seen it.
They'll circle the parking lot in their gas guzzling SUV to get a parking spot right next to the store.
And my wife teases me that I'm always at the end of the lot. I never really thought about it, but I think that was what was going through my head.
Right? Yeah. I mean, that happens. That's normal. That is a good parking spot. Just freaking park 12 spaces away and walk the extra 12 spaces.
Absolutely.
A, you're going to save time in totality. And B, you're going to walk a little bit more. That's not too bad. There's this thing thrown around where, I don't know if there's any validity to it, but they talk about, 10,000 steps a day. You've heard that, I'm sure, right? With fitness trackers, Fitbits, and those kind of things. Again, I don't know the studies. I'm not a scientist, but, it's thrown around that if you walk or move approximately 10,000 steps in a day, that's going to lead to a pretty healthy lifestyle. Now, I've had a Fitbit for off and on over the last 5 years, and I can tell you in the normal course of life, without making a special effort to move, I walk somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 steps a day, which, that's a tiny fraction. That's a fifth or a third, of our overall daily recommended walking. And, I'm a reasonably fit guy, and, that just isn't good enough. So I need to build in a couple of those 5 or 10 minute walks into a day to even get close. You can walk, in my pace at least, I can walk about 1,200 steps in 10 minutes. So, if I build in 3 of these small walks, that's an almost 4,000 steps extra a day. I mean, that's pretty darn good. That more than doubles my normal daily walking. And, honestly, my 2,000 to 3,000 is way more than what a lot of people do, sadly. People who are really sedentary, they're walking 1,000 steps or fewer in a day. I mean, that's pathetic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now I take a slightly more active approach to, what I do in terms of a workout routine, probably the more traditional one. But yeah, you need to be moving. Now, the other thing I find is that everything fits together. It's very hard for me to actually focus on the diet if I'm not also exercising. And it's very hard for me to exercise if I'm not focusing on the diet. I'm not going to go exercise after eating pizza. I'm not going to do it after having junk food. But if I'm eating clean, it feels like that is a synergistic approach to then going and exercising as well. They add on together, and the sum of the parts, exceeds the components. So for me, I hate to run. Even when I'm lean and I love to run, I hate to run. I despise it. I do it because I understand the importance of it to some degree, but I've never been someone that's going to run a marathon or half marathon, that sort of thing. Brad was actually encouraging me on the way back from the Camp Mustache that we were at, that he does the whole interval thing. And I've really started to hop on that one because it's efficient and it makes sense. And one of the things you should try to do is just break a sweat once a day. I mean, that's how many of you just go through life where you never exert yourself. So Brad was telling me, and this is what he said, so I'm going to steal, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but to do an interval where you run as hard as you can for a minute, and then you walk for a minute and a half, and you just repeat that 5 times. And I've started doing that since he told me that, and I love it. And I never wanted to do, it's called HIIT training, high intensity interval training. And there's more complicated versions of that where you'll have 3 different levels. And I've always just kind of not wanted to do it. But ever since he told me about that 2 weeks ago, I've tried to do it, every day or every other day. And it's been great. I mean, you'll break a sweat in 11 minutes, and you can't do that if you're just jogging at your 4 or 5 miles an hour that you normally run. You won't. But that pushes you, gets that heart rate up. And I think it gives you a metabolic burn that exceeds even when you finish, because your body is still compensating for the level of effort that it had to exert.
Yeah, agreed completely. And yeah, I'm glad to hear that you've been doing that. It's definitely a staple in my exercise routine. Even though my goal is to run that 6-minute mile, really, I hate running, honestly. It's just something that, to go out and run for an hour, I mean, that I would rather do almost anything else than that. So, for me, mentally, and you have to figure out, just like anything in life, you need to figure out what works for you. For me, mentally, running for a minute or 45 seconds on a treadmill, sprinting, I'm up at, between 10 and 11 miles per hour on a treadmill, which is a pretty good clip. If you see someone at a gym running at that, you're like, wow, that person's moving. I can do that for a minute psychologically very, very easy, especially if I know that break is coming after.
I was at 9 miles an hour. My heart was burning after I was finished.
It's a good clip, right?
It was a good clip. Yeah.
And yeah, you'll be up over 10 pretty soon, I'm sure. And, you're actually exerting yourself. Like Jonathan said, you're sweating. Your heart is at, I don't know how many beats per minute, but 160, 180 beats per minute, which is significant. And, another thing, Jonathan, you're going to notice is your recovery on that minute and a half. And so that is, essentially to get your heart rate down to a normal level, 110, 120 beats per minute if you're, within an exercise protocol there. So you're going to see that recovery period is going to lessen, which will be really, really neat. So you'll be able to exert yourself more, and your recovery period will shorten almost naturally just because your body is working more efficiently. Again,
you hear us talk about simplicity and then also efficiency, right? There's something very efficient about that. If it takes me 30 minutes to break a sweat with just a normal run or a walk, but I can do it in 10 or 11 and walk away and feel like I've gotten my heart rate up for the day, that's 20 minutes of my day that I've just gotten back for something else. And maybe I can just do the rest of it with my regular workout, but then I could just be done with it. And so I hate running, but that, I think, is something that you can take away. You don't need a gym to do that. You just need to get out there. You run hard, you walk for a minute and a half. You run hard, you walk for a minute and a half. Just do that a few times. 10, 11 minutes later, by the time you're around your block, you're back home, you're done, you move on to the next thing.
Yeah, for sure. And, also we're not trying to be tough guys here saying, oh, I run at, 10 miles per hour on the treadmill. I don't care about that.
I'm sure the tough guys are laughing at us. This is just what we do.
But, if sprinting for you is 6 miles per hour on a treadmill, then that's great. Just figure out what works for you. Okay. This is not, we're calling down from on high saying you have to do X, Y, and Z.
Now then, finally, weights. I love lifting weights. I don't think enough people take advantage of them. I think a lot of women view it as they're going to get muscular. I'm a guy, I can't even get muscular. I don't think you got to worry about
Women are not getting bulky lifting weights.
But there are some real benefits to doing it. When you actually lift weights, whether it be like a Smith machine or free weights, your body is breaking down the muscles. They're having these tiny micro fractures in them essentially. And then it takes a couple days to heal. And that increases, it does two things. It actually increases your metabolism temporarily because your body has to burn more energy in order to repair those muscles. And then they do increase and they tighten and they tone. It also, if you're a female, it's going to increase your bone strength and decrease your risk of osteoporosis or fractures. And then, when you're running, typically, especially when you're running the traditional way, which is where you throw the treadmill or on 6 miles an hour and you run for 30 minutes and then you get off. As soon as you're done, maybe you burned 120, 180 calories while you're running, but as soon as you're done, it's over. You're not burning more calories. But with weights, your metabolism has a peak in it for the next 12 to 24 hours while your body is healing. So that is another efficiency thing. And there's so many benefits to it. You're adding muscle, you're burning fat, your metabolism is speeding up because now you have more muscle in it. And one of the things that I try to do that I've realized more and more is that I'm not as interested in the beauty muscles as I was when maybe I was like a teenager. I'm not interested in having 20-inch biceps. It's never going to happen for me. I've done weights at all sorts of intensities. I've done it 6 or 7 days a week at one point, and I was taking creatine and all the supplements, doing everything. And I got to a level of fitness that I was very proud of. And then I stopped for 6 months or a year. It was completely gone. All that work was gone. It's just unnecessary. You don't need it. No one is impressed by it. Probably even the people I thought were impressed by it weren't impressed by it. And just, why are you doing it? So my goal is not to be a bodybuilder anymore. It is not to be respected around the world for my level of fitness and my 6-pack abs. It is, it again goes back to what that mission statement, that goal was. I want to be lean. I want to be healthy. I want to enjoy wearing my clothes, and not feeling like my clothes wear me. And if you're going to do that, you don't need to spend a bunch of time working on bicep curls. So I focus on very functional fitness. So like Brad was talking about, pull-ups. You want to engage these large muscle groups that are going to give you the biggest bang for your buck for the time you're putting in. So pull-ups are fantastic. Push-ups are fantastic. If you have access to weights, either at your gym or at home, if you're doing it at home, you can just get a barbell and a few weights, squats and deadlift. Deadlifts are amazing. People hate deadlifts, but they are just phenomenal. If you have them at home, just go do them a few times a day. Try and get 3 sets in every single day. And you're activating your metabolism around the clock. It couldn't be more simple.
Yeah, that is really, really great advice. And, for me, I certainly do a little bit of weight training at the gym, but for me, it's much more about these body weight exercises. So, I'm constantly doing just sets of push-ups. I'll build them into my day where, literally I'm taking a break, for work. I'll just drop and do a set of push-ups, just kind of building it into the day. I leave my pull-up bar up in the door frame, just go by and do a set of pull-ups. This is not, setting up to do an hour of exercise, which, works obviously for many people. But for me, just building it into the day is just much more effective.
And back in the quote unquote Stone Age, you had this physical activity spread throughout your day as the normal course of life. And you just don't have that in this, first world country that we live in, where everything is brought to you and you have a remote control. So you don't have to go turn on the TV yourself. You are in a position where you can just sit still for 8 hours a day here, but it's not good for your body. And what Brad's talking about is basically building physical activity into his day, spread throughout the day. And I remember when I was at my leanest, I would have my workouts, yes, but I also would just sporadically just do physical exercise, and it just keeps your metabolism going around the clock.
Yeah, and it's cool because we've kind of built this now into our family time. So, my kids are getting to see. So, I've been doing this for a couple of years, and now my wife, Laura, has started to do push-ups and different type of exercises. And, we'll literally do that at 7 o'clock at night, we'll just in the living room sit there and do exercise for a couple of minutes. And, my younger daughter, Molly, and my older daughter, Anna, as well, she gets involved, but Molly especially, she loves watching us do this exercise. And now she's emulating it. She's actually taking part. And
so you're modeling it for your kids, which is really cool.
It's so awesome. I mean, it really, really is so awesome. And, just kind of real super quick aside is, kind of the like force multipliers, I call them, the things that have been really beneficial for me. Specifically exercise wise is, one is a free thing, which I'll mention now is, there's a guy named Mark Devine, who is a former Navy SEAL commander. He runs a website called sealfit.com. Okay. So if you go to sealfit.com/yoga, there's, he calls them warrior yoga. Okay. So he instituted this with a lot of his Navy SEALs. And, when you go through it, I can see why. There's, I think it's, warrior yoga short form A and B. Okay. I would highly recommend just pop onto that website and check it out. They're 5-minute little yoga sessions, which, might sound woo-woo to you guys out there who aren't into yoga, but man, is that just great functional fitness. That will beat the heck out of you. That's honestly. Cool. If you do 5 minutes of that, I do that every single morning now. So I do, it's this one like 40-second little thing that you repeat 5 to 7 times. And, what he always recommends is kind of like building the breathing into it. So, at first, as Tim Ferriss likes to joke, I was, breathing through my mouth like a, asthmatic monkey and, just sucking air. I mean, even just doing this 5 minutes of yoga. But now I've gotten to the point where my breathing system is good enough and efficient enough that I can do it entirely through my nose in a very controlled manner. And like, as silly as that sounds, man, that was such an accomplishment when I was able to do that. And, it is just great exercise. I've seen, muscles that I've never seen before. And I attribute it to a large degree to that particular thing, and it's free.
That's cool. And I love the fact you do it with your family. I do it with my wife. I think I'll probably incorporate my kids into it. When I'm doing cardio, I can take my dogs for a walk. That can be your cardio. You can build this into your life. You don't need to go do anything, completely crazy. So, I think we've kind of gone through different components. That's pretty much everything I'm doing. I will weigh myself on a daily basis. That scale can never go up. If it goes up, or if it's not going down over the course of a week, you might be doing something wrong. You need to tweak it, but you cannot afford, when you're going to lose 30 pounds in 3 months, to have a bad day. You just don't have time to catch up to your mistakes. So, when you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, all right, I'm going to take some of this or all of this, hopefully you're not, or if maybe you're in the position that you don't need any of it, in which case I'm surprised you're listening to this. But if you want to take part of it or all of it, you can think about how intense you want to be. What are your goals? If you want to do it in 3 months, you can kind of follow some of the things that I said. If you want an idea of some of the meals I'm eating, I'm going to document some of the ones on there. I don't have one that I feel particularly passionate about. Typically, I go with healthier carbohydrates. I try to keep them balanced. I don't mind doing breads, but they're going to be, and cereals, as long as they're healthy, like cashew would be, a healthy cereal I might have in the morning. It's high protein. I would have that with maybe almond milk, something like that. For lunch, maybe I'll have a salad or maybe a panini. Probably not, just because of how much how much weight I'm trying to lose in a short period of time. And for dinner, it's going to be a protein and it's going to be a sweet potato, something like that. And then there's a million ways to do that differently. But if you decide I want to be that intense and I want to do a transformation, if you're doing a transformation, it's pretty cool, especially if you're going to do it. You're going to tell everybody about it. You're super psyched. You can't see how you're going to mess it up. Take a before and after picture, because that's a pretty short period of time to do it in. Make sure you're weighing yourself every single day. Document the weight on some sort of sheet of paper. You need to always be, looking for it to go down by 0.2. And you need to make sure you're weighing apples to apples. So if you're weighing yourself, you need to weigh yourself at the same time every single day. You want to do it on an empty stomach after you've used a bathroom for the first time of the day and before you've had any meals. But you're always looking for that trend line to go down. And then you got to figure out, if you're not going fast enough because you're trying to hit 30 pounds over 3 months, because you can't do anything about your metabolism and you can only decrease your calories so low. I would say probably around, for a female, the lowest you'd want to get would be 1,200. For a male, the lowest would probably be 1,500. My maintenance calories, if I were going to stay at the same weight, would probably be around 2,500 calories a day. And so because you can only go so low, if you need to go past that, then that means you need to be exercising more because you need to burn those extra calories.
Yeah, and I would just say, to end this is, don't get bogged down in the details, right? Jonathan is doing this amazing transformation. he understands that's not sustainable for his entire life, to go crazy like this for a year, 2 years, 5 years. He has a very specific goal in 3 months. But what we're talking about, and what hopefully you're taking away, is the little hacks. We probably mentioned 30, 50 hacks in this episode alone. If you take a couple of those away, you're going to be so much better off health-wise a year or two from now. And man, if you can start building more and more of them into your life, it's going to be a transformation, just not in 3 months. Maybe it's 24 months. And that's pretty darn good.
But this has been a lot of fun. I think it's a nice tie-in to the one that we did earlier, which is the Ultimate Costco Meal Plan and America's Food Obsession, that podcast. So, if you listen to that, everything that we said in those podcasts is still true. We're still using all of that stuff. The budget, the amount of money that we talked about in terms of what you need to spend, and how much time you should be putting in, all of that ties into this one. But this is how you take that information and all those actionable tips, and then you apply it to either a transformation or a lifestyle change. That's the next step. So I hope that you've enjoyed the story, and that you check in with us next time as we kind of maybe do an update and see how all this is going. So we mentioned a lot of links in this episode. If you want to go back and hear the first half of our Healthy Living 101 podcast, the first episode that we talked about that in was episode 7 of this podcast, titled Congratulations, America, You're Fat and Broke. You can access that podcast at choosefi.com/007. If you want to access the diet that I'm using, any of the meal plan tips that we provided, you can access all of that information by going to choosefi.com, clicking on the experiments banner, and then going to Healthy Living 101, where we will have updates about my progress if you're hearing this a little bit later in the year, as well as any helpful PDF files that we might have created to go along with this. If you're interested in the links for the Bulletproof Coffee or the SEAL workout that Brad mentioned, you can go to our show notes, which are at choosefi.com/10.
You've been listening to Choose FI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.